Okay, so this morning what we're going to work on is the Estructuras sections from Lesson 6, the first one and the second one. And before we get started, I just wanted to see if you guys had any questions, Rebecca or Julie. And remind me, do you guys both go by your first names, Rebecca and Julie? Some people have different names they use.
Yes.
I'm Becky, and I don't have any questions. I'm good.
Okay, Becky. Let me remember. And Julie, did you have any questions?
No, not right now. And Julie's fine.
Okay, great. Let me pull these slides up real quick. And if you guys have questions as we're going along, I don't know whether you listened to the archive from the last session or not, but down here underneath where your names are on the right-hand side, you've got your yes, your little check mark. That means like you're shaking your head yes. The X means no. The hand, of course, is you raising your hand. That'll get my attention that I need to pause and see what's going on. And then you've got the emoticons or whatnot if you want as well. If you check like yes, like see how there's a yes by my name now, and then I want to take that off, it'll just stay up there until you click it again. And I re-clicked it, and now it's gone away, just so you guys know how that works. Let's see. If you've got your book out with you, I'm going to be on page 200 in the Vista book. And let's see. This is pulling up. It takes just a second. And basically what we're going to do is just go through the information first about saber and conocer. The big deal here is that both the verbs mean to know. And in Spanish, just you may have realized, like with the verb ser and estar, they both mean to be, but it doesn't mean you can use them interchangeably. And that's the same deal with saber and conocer. And the big deal with these two guys is that the yo forms are special. They're irregular. They don't follow the rules. I have them here for you in red so that they'll stand out in your mind. Both the verbs mean to know, and in just a second we'll talk about when you use each of them, but just to talk about how they're conjugated. And if you guys want to repeat after me at home, repiten por favor. We'll go through how to conjugate the verb saber. Repitan, sé, sabes, sabe, sabemos, saben. Otra vez, sé, sabes, sabe, sabemos, saben. And on this slide, I did not put the vosotros form. Your book always shows you the vosotros form, and you may have learned this in Spanish 1 or not. It depends on who you had as your instructor. I typically don't have my students learn the vosotros form. It's easy to pick up if you are in Spain, and other than that, it's not really used very commonly in Latin America. And even in Spain, if you just use the ustedes form, you're not going to be offending anybody. So you're seeing that it's not here. Let's see, with conocer, repiten por conozco, conoces, conoce, conocemos, conocen. Otra vez, conozco, conoces, conoce, conocemos, conocen. And that Z there in the verb conozco, it makes like an S sound. In English, we want to make a big Z sound out of it, but in Spanish, it's just conozco. And that's how these verbs work. And in just a minute, we'll see how they're different. Do either one of you have questions about how they're conjugated?
Will we be tested on the vosotros form?
Typically, you'll never see on the quizzes or the tests the vosotros. And if you do, it's in your book. It's there for you to learn. I don't ever put it in my in the presentations I make. The one that you may see it on other presentations that I have that were made up by other people, but on the ones I make, I don't put it in there.
Okay, gracias.
De nada, de nada. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we'll move on and talk about when you use each of them, because they mean the exact same thing. Let's see. Saber is used to know a fact or a piece of information or to know how to do something. So those are kind of three different things. The examples that you had in your book, we'll just use these and then I'll make up some other ones. No sé tu número de teléfono. I don't know your phone number. Your phone number is like a piece of information. Mi hermana sabe hablar francés. My sister, and I have a typo there. I need to fix that. It says ma sister. My sister knows how to speak French. And knowing how to do something, you use the verb saber, and you just conjugate it for whoever it is that you're talking about. So like if you were going to say, like if someone says to you, oh, I know you love chocolate, that's like a piece of information or a fact about you. If you say, I don't know how to do this, no sé hacerlo, that's also using saber. Conocer, on the other hand, is more like being acquainted with something, either a person, place, or thing. And in English, we don't really, well, we do use the word acquainted with, but we don't use it that much. You see it more in written text rather than someone saying, oh, I'm acquainted with Mr. Smith. And in English, we just say, you know, I know him or I don't know him well. That's how we convey that same idea. But the examples that are here, conoces la ciudad de Nueva York, do you know New York City? Not, you know, do you know it exists? Do you know where it is? But are you familiar with it? Have you been there? You know, not necessarily do you know every single street and you know, great restaurant in the whole city, but are you familiar with it? Have you been there before? It's kind of what it's saying. Typically, you can't know a city without having been there in Spanish. I know with the internet especially, we can virtually have been there, but typically it's that you've been there before. If you're using the verb conocer. And then the second example here, no conozco a tu amigo Esteban. I don't know your friend Esteban. So knowing a person, there's not an example here about knowing a thing. An example with that would be like, conoces la música de Mozart. Conoces la música de Mozart. Let me see if I can. La música de Mozart. Conoces la música de Mozart, and the font's different here because I'm adding it in now. But you can get the gist of it. Are you familiar with Mozart's music? Like, could you pick out one of his songs, you know, out of a mix of classical music? You could have the question, ¿Conoces el arte de Picasso? Do you know Picasso's art? Like as in, are you familiar with it? Not do you have every piece memorized, you know, but could you pick out a Picasso if you were in an art museum is kind of what it's asking. Do you guys have any questions about when to use saber and conocer? Okay, neither one of you do. And next, there's going to be it's like a poll question, a quiz question. And hang on just a second. I think this didn't save my changes. Let me make sure. Yeah, it didn't save my changes. So let me put this in next. And what you'll do, see this question here, and it says, which verb would you use to say you know Mr. Smith? And you'll either click on saber or conocer, and then click submit. And when you click submit, it'll tell you what the correct answer should have been. And we're not going to talk about what the correct answer is so that the people who do the archive later aren't hearing the answer. This is just to make sure we're all here together working on it. So I'm just going to leave this up for a second for you guys. I think I heard both of you click in. Let me make sure. Yeah.
I hit the wrong button.
You hit the wrong button? Okay. It's not a big deal. Okay, I think I got both of your answers. Let me update this real quick. Well, it's only showing me one, that one person has responded. Let me see now. Okay, now I've got both of you. Okay, I got both of you. All right, and let me pop back up here. It wasn't in the order I wanted it to be, but that's just there to keep everybody with us. Don't worry about that. And so if you are at home, hopefully you answered the question. If you're listening to this later, go ahead and answer that question, and then I track it to see what people are answering. Let's see. So let me see. I can tell something happened here. Hang on just a second. Let me get back on the slide that I want. Okay, here we go. There's something called the personal ah, and it's something that in English we do not have, the personal ah. And in Spanish, it doesn't translate as anything. It just kind of has to be there to let you know that you're talking about a living thing. That's why it says here when the direct object of conocer is a person or a pet, the personal ah is used. And it's funny, to say a person or a pet, but basically a living thing that has a name. If you had a pet rock, it's not alive, but like if your child thought it was alive and it had a name like, Fred or John or something, you could use the personal ah for it. But typically it's something that's alive and has a name. So, for example here, ¿conoces la Habana? Do you know Havana, like the city Havana? And that's not a living thing. It's named, but it's not a living thing. So you don't need the personal ah. Just as the name implies, personal ah means it's a person. But when you throw in the animal thing, people can kind of get confused with that. But it's a living thing with a name. And then ¿conoces a Celia Cruz? Do you know Celia Cruz? The ah is there because she's a person. You also use the personal ah with visitar, the verb to visit. Llevar, like to take someone somewhere, like llevo a mi amiga al mall, al centro comercial. I take my friend to the mall. Those are other ways that you can use the personal ah, but you're seeing it for the first time probably here. Do either of you have any questions about the personal ah? No? Okay. All right. The last thing I want to talk about, let's see. There's some other verbs that work just like conocer in that they have that ZCO. And so conducir, the yo form would be, I'm going to type it aside here real quick. Hang on just a second. Would be conduzco, right, for the yo form. And then all the other forms are going to follow the rules. You just take off that IR and add your ES, E, IMOS, EN. So it follows the rules. It's just the yo form would be, like for parecer, would be parezco. For ofrecer, it would be ofrezco. Let me scoot the cursor down a little bit. Hang on. Let's see, ofrezco. And then for traducir, it would be traduzco for the yo form. So when you see this in your book, when they say they're conjugated like conocer, what they mean is it has that ZCO ending, and that's something unique just for the yo form. And the other forms follow the rules exactly. So like to say she translates, you would say ella traduce, and that it would be traduce because it's conjugated for the third person singular for ella, ¿verdad? So that's what's happening there. Do either one of you have any questions with these? No? Okay. The last thing that's here are just the inténtalo practice from your book. And with these, you're not having to decide whether it's saber or conocer. I'm telling you, hey, use saber here for numbers 1 through 8. And then on the other slide, use conocer for numbers 1 through 8 again here. This is exactly what's in your book on page 200, and it's one of the activities that you will, if you haven't completed the activities already for this week, that you will complete for this 6.1 Estructura section. What I like to do right now is just see if either of you, if you've been through this section in the book, if you have any questions about any of the other practice activities, because I know when you do them, you typically get a response immediately from the in linea site as to whether the answers are correct or not. If there's one that perhaps you didn't understand or that you want clarification on, now's the time to ask about that from the Saber and Conocer section. Does anybody have any questions that you want to get clarified right now?
No, I'm just going to have to look over it some more.
Okay. All right. And Grant, I see you're here. Welcome. We're glad you could make it. We just went through Saber and Conocer, and we're going to move on to the 6.2 section here in just a second. So everybody feels comfortable with this. Let's do you guys have your books with you? Could you just check yes or no if you have your book out and open with you? Okay, Julie and Rebecca, you guys, and Grant, you do too. Okay, let's just to practice it, because if you don't practice it, you'll totally lose it. I think practicing the conjugations with these two slides, you can do that on your own. What I want to do is talk about whether you're supposed to use ser or conocer to kind of try and check the difference out. If you guys will look on page 201 in your book, up at the top, number 1, the first exercise there, completar. This is also one that is on the In Linea site that you guys probably have completed or will be completing soon. But let's talk about maybe just even the first 2 and go through those. Let's see. Grant, your name is first in the list, so I'm going to pick on you. And you guys are already figuring out the answers here. What about numero uno? Grant, if you'll read the question, and if you know the answer, fill it in with the correct either saber or conocer that's there.
Mis hermanos saben conducir, pero yo no sé.
Okay, good. And why did you choose saber over conocer, given what it's talking about?
Explaining it in my words, it's just saber is knowing how to do something, and conocer is like when you know someone or.
That's exactly right. Knowing how to do something is saber. And what the sentence says there is saying, my brothers know how to drive. Conducir significa to drive. Pero yo no sé means, but I don't know. And the understanding there is, I don't know how to drive. And for talking about how to do something, you're going to always use the verb saber. Muy bien. Let's see. Julie, can you do número 2?
¿Conocen ustedes dónde está el estudio? No nos llevamos.
Okay, muy bien. This one, the first one, rather than conocen, it would be saben. And this one to me could kind of go either way, but because they say, do you know where the stadium is, that's like a fact or a piece of information. So for that one, you would use saber. If it said, do you know the stadium, just not where it is, but are you familiar with it, that would be conocer. Like if it's a famous stadium somewhere and you're asking, like, have you ever visited before? But with this, because it says, ¿Dónde está el estadio? That's like a fact or a piece of information. So that one would be, ¿Saben ustedes dónde está el estadio? And then you say, no sabemos, because no, you're not sure about that particular piece of information. You don't have that fact or piece of information. What about, just so everyone can do one, Becky, you want to do número 3?
Conoces a Cher? Bueno, sé quién es, pero no la conozco.
Muy bien, muy bien. And this one uses both of them in here. When it says conoces a Cher, Cher is obviously, a famous person. And so, are you familiar with her? Do you know who she is what that's kind of asking. And the person says, well, I know who she is, like as in a fact, I know that Cher is a famous singer and actress, but I don't know her in the sense of being familiar with her or knowing her personally. So the first one is conoces a Cher, sé quién es, pero no la conozco. Okay, and we can take a second to do the last one if you guys want to. Let's see, Grant, you want to do the número 4?
Sure. Mi profesora conoce Cuba y también sabe bailar salsa.
Muy bien. And so with this one, you've got my professor knows Cuba, as in she's familiar with it. Maybe she's been there. And also sabe bailar salsa. Bailar salsa means to dance salsa, so it must be she knows how to dance salsa. So that's how those work. And you've got lots of other practice that's there for you guys with the other exercises, but it helps to apply it to something real that you can see right now. It's one thing to be presented with the information. It's another thing to use it. So everybody, you guys did a great job with those. Anybody have any other questions with saber and conocer? Okay, so we're all good to go with that. What we'll do now then is the other estructura section that you guys had for this week was 6.2, the indirect object pronouns. And give me just a second, let me pull that up. And basically, if you remember from Spanish 1, the verb gustar, to like, gustar, you learned that the indirect object pronouns that you used there were me, te, le, nos, os, and les. And those are those same indirect object pronouns. So it's sort of like you're recycling something. You have to learn how to use them here just as an indirect object pronoun all by itself. But if you can remember the gustar section that you learned in Spanish 1, all that information is going to be recycled here. So you may realize that you already knew this. Basically, talking English grammar, if you don't know English grammar, it's going to be really confusing not to try and learn Spanish grammar. So just in general terms, a direct object is the noun or pronoun that directly receives the action of the verb. So if I say, I give you a book, the thing that was given is the book, and the book is the direct object. In contrast, the indirect objects are nouns or pronouns that receive the action of the verb indirectly. So the you in that sentence, I give you the book, the you is that indirect object. Because I'm not giving you away, I'm giving the book to you. So that's just in a nutshell what object pronouns are. And what we're going to be talking about today are the indirect object pronouns. Let me pull up the next one here. Let's see. Okay, and this is straight out of your book. Basically what happens if you're trying to locate who or what is the indirect object pronoun, it will answer the question to whom or for whom the action is done. So like with this example, Roberto le presta 100 pesos a Luisa. It's basically saying Robert lends 100 pesos to Luisa. You could ask yourself the question, like at the bottom there, ¿a quién le presta Roberto 100 pesos? To whom does Roberto lend 100 pesos? And that will let you know who the indirect object is. I used to confuse myself to death in middle school language arts classes trying to figure these things out. I don't know why, but it just seemed very complicated. It doesn't seem complicated to me now, but if it is complicated for you, asking yourself that, who is to whom or for whom, that can help you locate who the indirect object pronoun is. The indirect object pronouns, as I mentioned earlier, are just like what they were when you learned the gustar verb. And they are, if you want to repeat at home, feel free. Me, te, le, nos, os, and les. Again, they're me, te, le, nos, os, les. And basically, these indirect object pronouns mean to or for whoever it is that you're talking about. So for me, it's to or for me. With the indirect object pronoun they, it means to or for you. And of course, this is the familiar you. Remember, you have the difference between tú and usted that you learned in Spanish 1. You can go back to lesson 1 if you don't remember what those differences are. Hopefully everybody does. Le can mean a lot of different things, because if you'll remember, this third person singular is where we find usted, él, and ella. So it can refer to all those different subjects. It could be to or for you, as in the formal you. It can be to or for him or her, as in referring to él or ella. And then with nos, of course, that means to or for us, like the nosotros, right? Os would be your reference to vosotros, like the you guys, the familiar you all or you guys. And then les, here again, you've got ustedes, ellos, ellas that correspond to this third person plural. The les can be to or for you, formal, like the you guys. And in everywhere in the world except Spain, nowadays, people have dropped out of the custom of using vosotros, so the ustedes form is the formal and the familiar all in one. And then les can also mean to or for them, like ellos or ellas. And so what we're going to see next is a little multiple choice question. The way these work, again, you'll read the question and submit your own answer. And we're not going to discuss the answer. When you hit submit, it'll tell you what the correct answer was. If you have questions after the session about why the answer to a question was what it was, I'll be happy to go over it with you. But we're putting this in just to help everybody who's not here and will be accessing the archive to get credit. So here's this multiple choice question. It says, which indirect object pronoun means to him or for him? And you'll, fill in the bubble next to either nos, le, or te, and then you'll hit submit. If you'll do that now, please. Okay, so I've got all three of you, and you guys saw what the correct answer was when you click submit. So I've got all three answers. Good job, and we're going to go ahead and move on these guys. Let's see. It takes a second for these to pull up. Here we go. And if you remember back from lesson 5, let me find it real quick in the book. Because even if you had the face-to-face class, whenever you had Spanish 1, if you use the Panorama book rather than the Vistas book, you'll notice that it's the exact same book. The pages are just numbered differently. And there's a couple things that are different, but it's basically the same book. Lesson 5, it was on page 174 and 175. If you just want to go back and refresh your memory about the direct object pronouns, it's on page 174 and 175 in the Vistas book. But anyway, this is just reminding you that the direct object pronouns and the indirect object pronouns for the singular ones, me, te, and the plural ones, nos and os, are the same as the direct object pronouns. And this is saying right here, indirect object pronouns agree in number with the corresponding nouns, but not in gender. And what that means is number is whether something's singular or plural. So with the in number with the corresponding nouns, but not in gender. And we'll see when we do some examples here what we're talking about. Let's see. Okay, and this with using the indirect object pronoun and the noun or pronoun that it refers to all in the same sentence. You did this when you worked with the gustar verbs. and Spanish 1. And basically what this does is it clarifies who it is that you're talking about. And the way you do that is by putting right here where it says indirect object, whoever. So like the first one, ella le vende la ropa a Elena. You could just say ella vende la ropa a Elena, or you could nix the a Elena and you could say ella le vende la ropa, period. The a Elena is just there to clarify because le can mean so many different things. It can mean to you formal, it can mean to him, to her, and we don't necessarily know who the him or her is. So to clarify, we say and then whoever the person's name is. This next example, les prestamos el dinero a Inés y Alex. The les is referring to Inés y Alex. And this is what we were talking about with on the previous slide where we said the indirect object pronouns will agree in number but not in gender. Elena is one person, so we're using le, which means to her, right? She sells the clothes to her. And the second one, Inés y Alex, son dos personas, es plural. Les prestamos el dinero a Inés y Alex. Okay, so you're using the les, which means to them. All right, does this make sense to you guys? Can I get a yes or a no? Okay, Becky, I didn't get a response from you, but I'm not sure if you're still here or not. That's the amazing thing about.
I'm still here. It's not letting me say okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. I didn't see your yes clicker. That's what I wasn't sure if you were still thinking about it or if you had stepped away for a minute. Okay, great. So you guys are good to go with this then. We're going to go ahead and look at where you put the indirect object pronoun. It's one thing to understand what it is and which one's which, but we need to know where to put them too. Basically, this can get, you can make things as hard as you want to make it. That's what I always tell my students. My slogan in life is keep it simple. Keep it as simple as you can. Don't complicate things more than you have to. And with that, the rule is the indirect object pronoun is almost always going to go before the first conjugated verb. There's other places you can put it, but don't make it any harder. And that's what we're going to see in just a second here. And this slide is just showing you can put it either with the a Elena or without it. So like this first example, Ana le presta la falda a Elena. You've got the a Elena there to clarify who it is she's lending the skirt to. También le presta unos blue jeans. So she also lends her a pair of blue jeans. And by the context, you can tell that we're still talking about Elena. You don't have to clarify Elena there again. And then it must be on this next slide that we talk about where they're placed. I'm out of order here. Yeah, here we go. Keep it simple. If you always put it before the conjugated verb, you can't go wrong. In negative sentences, it'll go between the no and the conjugated verb. So, for example, this first one, Martín me compra un regalo. Martín buys me a gift. Compra is your verb here, the verb to buy, and the me comes right before it. The second example is showing you a negative sense. Eva no me escribe cartas. The indirect object pronoun me is going to come right before that first conjugated verb, escribe. So, Eva no me escribe cartas. All right? And if you go back and look in your book at the different examples that are there, you'll notice that in all of them, the me, te, le, nos, os, or les is coming right before that conjugated verb. Now, if you want to, you can put the indirect object pronoun, let me get this to pull up, either on the end of the present progressive or on the end of an infinitive. That's what this is showing you. Or you can keep it simple and just put it right before that first conjugated verb. When I'm asking you to write sentences or you're writing a paragraph for me or something, you have the freedom to put it wherever you want to. I say keep it simple, put it right before that first conjugated verb. Now, in your readings or what you hear in the audio exercises, you will hear it attached to the infinitive or attached to the present progressive. So I want you to know what that is. But when you yourself are creating the content, feel free to just put it right before that first conjugated verb. So, for example, él no quiere pagarte. Quiere is your first conjugated verb, right? Quiere, and then there's an infinitive. Infinitive just means it's not conjugated. It still has the AR, the ER, or the IR stuck on it. So, él no quiere pagarte. He does not want to pay you. You can also write it this way. Él no te quiere pagar. And it's the exact same sentence. They mean exactly the same thing. There's no, I can't think of how to say it. One way isn't necessarily better than the other. They're both equally correct, I guess is what I want to say. So they both mean he doesn't want to pay you. You can also, if you have a present participle, and remember the present participle is the ing kind of word. He is writing a postcard to her. You would say, él está escribiéndole una postal a ella. And with this, and you'll see on the next slide, if you're attaching it to the present participle, it can get tricky because you have to add an accent mark. And to me, that just opens up a can of worms for most students because most students don't know the rules about syllabification and where the stress goes on the word. So you can also keep it simple, put it before that first conjugated verb. So like this second example, the last example on the screen, él está escribiendo una postal a ella. He is writing a postcard to her. So this le here is coming right before that first conjugated verb. And to me, if you can be consistent in your own work, it'll help the rules sink into your head faster. And then with these, you could not have this a ella here on the end of these last two examples. That's just there for clarification about who it is that the le is referring to. Does that make sense to both of you? Okay, good. Let's see. And this is just what I was talking about. If you attach it to the present participle, you have to add an accent mark to keep the stress on it correctly. And you can look in your book under the pronunciación or the ortografía sections, and it'll tell you about that, about how to know where to put the accent mark. Let's see. And this is what we've been talking about the whole time. Lay and lace can refer to so many different people that a lot of times you will want to clarify who it is that you're talking about. For example, if I just say, le doy $3. I give him, her, you $3. We don't know who the le is referring to. So the way you do that is just say, whoever, or whatever. And that's what this is saying here, because indirect object pronouns lay and lace have multiple meanings. Spanish speakers often clarify to whom the pronouns refer with the preposition a, and then you can either have him or her or a. You could put in somebody's name here, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, the teacher, the dog. You know, you can put whoever it is that it's referring to. So basically what you have here, they're showing you the difference between statements that use the a, whoever, and statements that don't. They're basically the exact same sentences in each of these four examples. Yo le compro un abrigo. We're not really sure who'd you buy the jacket for. But down below here, yo le compro un abrigo a, you could say a él, a ella, a usted. You could clarify who it is that you're talking about. The second example here, ella le describe un libro. She describes a book to, we don't know, to him, to her, to you. We're not sure who it is. And down here, they clarified it. Ella le describe un libro a Juan. So she described the book to Juan. it's totally personal preference whether you want to clarify the statement or not. In your writing sections on your test, you will want to clarify just so I can know who it is that you're talking about so that I can follow what it is that you're saying. The next one, él les vende unos libros. You're not sure, sombreros, perdón. Él les vende unos sombreros. We're not sure who he sells the hats to. And then, you could clarify it. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, mis padres, los estudiantes. You could put anything there that's third person plural. Ellos les hablan muy claro. They speak very clearly. To whom? We're not really sure. And then down here we realize, it's to the clients. And this is just to show you how helpful it can be to clarify your statement, to validate who it is exactly that you're talking about. And that can really help whoever's reading or hearing you speak feel confident in knowing what it is you're talking about, because lay and lace can be very ambiguous. You're not really sure who it is that you're talking about unless you put whoever. Okay, do either one of you have questions with these, with clarified and unclarified statements? No? Okay. The last thing that's in here is the verb dar. Dar is to give, and with that, you have to give something to someone or somebody. So with this, the verb dar that's here, we'll just go through it real quick if you want to repeat after me at home on your own. Repiten, por favor. Doy, das, da, damos, dais, dan. Doy, das, da, damos, dan. And with these, just the verb dar is irregular. Know that you've had it before. I think that's why they're presenting it to you here. If you had your Spanish at Greenville Tech, with the text that we use here, you wouldn't have had it yet. If you took Spanish 1 at another school or at a different time, you may have learned dar already. But it's just a verb that means to give. So when you give something, you give it to someone. So that's a great way to use these indirect object pronouns. So you've got mi abuela me da muchos regalos. Mi abuela is my grandmother, gives a lot of gifts to me. And remember that these indirect object pronouns, whether it be me, te, le, nos, os, or les, they're going to go right before your conjugated verb. And da is the third person singular form of the verb dar. That's what's happening there. I'm going to jump over here with another one with dar. Voy a darle consejos. I'm going to give her advice. You could also put that, they've attached it here to the infinitive. You could put the le at the beginning of the sentence. Le voy a dar consejos. It can go either place. Either way works. Okay, these other examples, te digo la verdad. Remember, digo is coming from that verb decir. It's one of the ones with an irregular yo form. I think you see those in lesson 4. You can go back and look in the table of contents, but I'm pretty sure it's lesson 4. And it was the verb decir, D-E-C-I-R, and it means to say or to tell. So te digo la verdad, I tell you the truth, or I'm telling you the truth. And then this example over here on the left, no les digo mentiras a mis padres. So basically the sentence is, I don't tell lies to my parents. And you've used the les. Les refers to my parents, mis padres. And digo is saying, I don't tell lies to my parents. And the les is going right here before that first conjugated verb. No les digo mentiras a mis padres. No. You have any questions with the verb dar? No? Okay. Last thing real quick. Just some expressions that use the verb dar. Dar consejos means to give advice. Dar un regalo is to give a present. And dar una fiesta is to throw a party. And so those are just some other ways to use the verb dar. Let's see. And this last slide is just talking about using the indirect object pronouns. And with this, we've got a few minutes. If you guys want to, we can just go through a few of these. Becky and Grant. Becky, if you'll do number 1, or I'll do it, and then you can do number 2, just so we can see how these work. Basically, what they're wanting here is if you were to refer to Elena, it would be the indirect object pronoun le. So Juan quiere darle un regalo. And the le, actually, it's kind of hard to tell with the blank, but it would be attached to the verb dar. If you were writing this sentence all on your own, not filling in a blank, you could put the le before the verb quiere. Juan le quiere dar un regalo a Elena. It's, you have a lot of freedom about where you put these. Let's see. Becky, can you do número 2, por favor?
Maria nos prepara un café.
Muy bien. María nos prepara un café. Muy bien. Y Grant, número 3.
Beatriz y Felipe me escriben desde Cuba.
Muy bien. Me escriben desde Cuba, ¿verdad? We can just do the rest of them real quick. It won't take us but a second. Becky, ¿quieres hacer el número 4, por favor?
Marta y yo nos compramos unos guantes.
Okay, muy bien. And for them, if it said for us, then we would use the nos, but because for them, it would be les. So Marta y yo les compramos unos guantes, meaning we buy some gloves for them. Okay, if you bought the gloves for yourself, for us, then you would put the nos there. What about número 5, Grant?
Los vendedores le venden ropa.
Los vendedores, I didn't catch if you said le or te, but for this one, because it's the to you and it's familiar and it's singular, familiar is the tu form. So you'd say los vendedores te venden ropa. Te venden ropa. And then número 6, Becky, sorry.
No worries. La dependienta nos enseña los guantes.
Muy bien, muy bien. And then there it would be nos enseña los guantes. Muy bien. So the clerk shows us the gloves. And that's how these guys work. If you guys have gone through the other exercises that are like on page 204 and 205 in your book with using the indirect object pronouns, do you have any questions on any of those exercises? No? Okay. Well, other than that, we have a few minutes if you guys have any just questions in general or anything. If you don't, I appreciate you both coming, and I know that the people who can't make it to the live sessions appreciate there actually being students here just like them, so they don't feel all alone. And you guys did a great job, and I appreciate you coming this morning. Do either of you have any questions for me before I stop the archive? Grant, you did? No? Okay. All right, then. Well, thank you guys both for coming this morning. And, and Grant is clapping. Thank you. You're too funny. Okay, I'm going to stop the archive now, and we'll be set.